Do you believe in ghosts or paranormal activities? Well, believe it or not, they are present and people have actually watched things happen from their naked eyes. But when such unusual activities happen in the safest places like a hospital, doesn't it freak you out? Let's look at some of the incidents which happen in the morgues and hospitals. They might freak you out, so let's get into the unexpected. You won't need coffee to get through the night because these tales are sure to keep you alert. 1. Have you ever heard about the dead coming to life? After a number of days spent looking into the matter, the authorities at last came up with an explanation for the peculiar occurrence. It was later discovered that a team of researchers had been conducting tests using a novel form of technology that had the potential to reanimate deceased bodies. The researchers had been putting the technology to the test on dead bodies in hospitals and mortuaries, and it had passed with flying colors. It appeared as though the deceased were regaining consciousness, but only for a little period of time. The citizens of the town were happy to learn that the bizarre phenomena could not be attributed to anything supernatural. Nonetheless, they continued to be skeptical of the technology. They came to the conclusion that they needed to keep a careful eye on the researchers to ensure that their trials did not result in any additional damage. As a result, the community was able to return to its previous state of tranquility, and the peculiar occurrence of the bodies of the deceased coming back to life was never mentioned again. 2. It was 3 a.m. in the Finocchieto Sanatorium building in Argentina, and the morgue guard was just about to finish his shift. He had been on duty for the past 8 hours, and he was looking forward to getting home and getting some rest. Suddenly, he heard a noise coming from the morgue. He cautiously opened the door and peered inside. To his surprise, he saw an invisible guest standing in the middle of the room. The guard was startled and he quickly shut the door. He took a few moments to compose himself before opening the door again. This time he was prepared for whatever he might find. He cautiously stepped inside and asked the invisible guest what he wanted. The invisible guest replied that he was looking for someone who had passed away recently. The guard was taken aback by this request, but he knew that it was his duty to help the guest in any way he could. He asked the guest to wait while he searched the morgue for the person he was looking for. After a few minutes of searching, the guard found the body of the person the guest was looking for. He then escorted the invisible guest to the body and allowed him to pay his respects. The guard watched as the invisible guest said a few words before leaving. The guard was amazed by this experience, and he couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. He had never seen anything like it before, and he knew that he would never forget this moment. He was glad that he had been able to help the invisible guest in his time of need. 3. It was a night marred by a violent storm, and the howling wind could be heard ripping through the trees. 2 people were seen standing in the shadows of a nearby building and keeping an eye on the mortuary that was located across the street. Inside, one light bulb was the only source of illumination for the 2 victims that were laid out on chilly metal slabs. The 2 people standing there were brothers, and they had traveled here to pay their respects to their father, who had passed away not too long ago. They had been informed that he had passed away unexpectedly, and they desired to spend one final moment with him. The brothers maintained their composure as they stood at the window and saw the mortuary below. They were able to observe the 2 bodies, both of which were motionless and unmoving. The brothers' hearts were filled with a profound sense of melancholy as they witnessed the gloomy scene. After a brief pause, one of the brothers finally broke the silence. He spoke in a low voice and said, "Let's go. There's nothing else that can be done about this situation." The brothers retreated into the shadows as they redirected their attention away from the window. As they were leaving, they could still sense their father's presence in the mortuary, observing them from beyond the grave as they made their way out. 4. The scariest things captured in morgues and hospitals. Well, morgues are a peaceful and quiet place, but when something strange happens there, it gets quite terrifying. One evening, a number of employees were working late inside the mortuary when all of a sudden, they heard a tremendous commotion coming from one of the room's corners. They looked to see what was going on and noticed that one of the chairs was moving on its own. They were all shaken with fear, and one by one, they started to retreat. They were startled when they heard a resounding crash and looked around to see a pile of papers that had been flung across the room. They all yelled at the same time and bolted out of the mortuary as quickly as they could. When they emerged from the mortuary, they were of the same opinion that something supernatural must have been present there. They were unanimous in their decision to stay away from that place forever. Since that day forward, the residents of morgues have had a healthy respect for the paranormal and have been under the impression that the mortuary is inhabited by a ghost. 5. John, a young man, was paralyzed and confined to a wheelchair after a tragic tragedy. For some years, he had been a resident of a nursing home, but his health had been progressively declining. The coroner was called in to inspect his body at the mortuary one day. John was in the mortuary by himself, sitting in his wheelchair when the door opened. As he looked up in surprise, he noticed someone standing in the doorway. It was a woman, and she was covered from head to toe in a long white robe and a veil. A flower arrangement was in her hands. John felt lost and afraid, but the woman's voice was soothing. She assured him she was taking him away from the mortuary and to a location where he could be healed. She claimed to be a guardian angel sent by God to look out for him. At first, John refused to accompany her, but ultimately he gave in. She then led him to a garden full of the most stunning blossoms he'd ever seen. Never before had he experienced such comfort and calm. The lady reassured John that his wounds had been mended and that he could resume his regular activities. She assured him that she would never leave his side, guiding and protecting him at all times. John thanked the woman and went back to his life feeling more energized than ever. The woman who led him out of the mortuary and into a better life was someone he would never forget. 6. The workers in the hospital mortuary were going about their normal tasks, which included performing autopsies and preparing the bodies of deceased patients for burial. One of the bodies that was lying on the table started to move all of a sudden. Everyone in the room was taken aback and unsure of what to do. The body had been pronounced dead only a few hours ago, and yet here it was moving around on the table, even though it had been certified dead. The staff swiftly placed a call for assistance, and shortly thereafter, a group of medical professionals arrived to conduct an investigation. They reached the conclusion that the body had been in a state of suspended animation and had abruptly come back to life after conducting a comprehensive examination. The medical professionals were perplexed and unable to make sense of what had taken place. They came to the conclusion that it would be best to continue their investigation at the hospital where the body was found. The body continued to move throughout the course of the following few days, and it even uttered a few sentences. It didn't take long for word of the mysterious body to travel across the city, and before long, people from all over the world were making their way there to examine it. Others thought it was a sign from the gods, while others thought it was a miracle. Many people believed it was either. No matter what the circumstances were, the body remained a source of intrigue and mystery. The experts eventually came to the conclusion that a unique medical condition had caused the body to be in a state of suspended animation for quite some time. They were successful in treating the illness, and over time the body went back to its usual functioning state. The tale of the dead body that was found moving unexpectedly in Morgues Hospital became a local urban legend almost immediately and is still told to this day. 7. The Morgues Hospital was shaken by the sudden appearance of 5 ghosts. They were all clad in white, and there was a peculiar glow emanating from them. The citizens of the town were shaken to the point of dread, and many of them fled their homes. The ghosts immediately began their assault on the medical facility, which resulted in widespread mayhem and property damage. They smashed windows, knocked down walls, and even made an attempt to get into the mortuary during their rampage. The workers of the hospital were powerless to stop the ghosts, and they resumed their rampage across the institution. The citizens of the town were in a hopeless situation and appealed to a band of courageous adventurers to come to their aid. As soon as the heroes arrived, they were able to put an end to the ghosts' reign of terror. The spirits were finally vanquished at the end of the drawn-out conflict, and the town was spared. The residents of Morgues were relieved, but the terrible experience of the attack by the 5 ghosts in their hospital was something they would never forget. To this day, they continue to share tales of the attack by the 5 ghosts and advise others to exercise extreme caution if they ever go to Morgues Hospital. 8. It was a normal night like any, but the security camera is showing something terrifying and no one can be seen, but a lot of things are happening. It was said to be haunted by a ghostly figure known as the Ghost Shoe Thief. According to urban legend, a ghostly figure known as the Ghost Shoe Thief would visit the mortuary at night and remove the shoes from the feet of the deceased before leaving. Even though no one knew why he did it, it was enough to discourage people from going to the hospital. However, later that evening, a young lady named Sarah made the decision to check out the medical facility. She was curious about the rumors because she had heard them before and thought they might be genuine. As she approached the mortuary, she saw a peculiar figure standing in the far corner of the room. It was the Phantom Bandit who did it. He was dressed in an elongated black cloak and carried a bag that was entirely full of footwear. Sarah was frightened, yet she was able to preserve her composure throughout the ordeal. She tried to get away by moving backwards slowly, but the ghost shoe thief saw her and started chasing after her. Sarah raced as quickly as she could, but the ghost shoe thief was able to outrun her. He overtook her and grabbed her by the arm as he approached her. She yelled for assistance, but no one came to her aid. Sarah was taken back into the mortuary by the ghost shoe thief, and once there, she was trapped in a chamber. After that, he went on to take all the shoes off of the deceased bodies in the room. The morning arrived, and Sarah was still trapped within the chamber. She was ultimately located by the authorities and brought to a secure location. The legend of the ghost shoe thief continues on in mortuaries, despite the fact that he was never seen again. People still talk about the ghost shoe thief and warn others to stay away from the old hospital. They also continue to tell stories about the ghost shoe thief. 9. The security camera captured something terrifying. Did you see? A man-like creature entered the corridor and vanished within air. How is this even possible? Some people believe that this is the soul of the doctor who committed suicide in this hospital and his soul walk around the corridors. What if you go to some hospital and encounter something like this? Will it not be super terrifying? Do let us know in the comment section below. Well, this is the end of the video. We will be back with more such videos. Don't forget to like this one and subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.